Hello, and welcome to Jolene Knits a Lot. My name is Jolene, and this is my show about knitting, crafting, baking, drinking, whatever floats your boat, really. I'm here to talk about all of it, and I'm so glad you've joined me today. Welcome. It's 2021. Happy New Year. I'm optimistic that 2021 will be more positive than 2020 was. I tend to be a somewhat optimistic person. I know that 2020 was full of some pretty crappy things, but there were some good things too. Um, I guess the glass is, I wouldn't say half full. It's maybe a quarter full. It's not completely dry. But thanks for joining me today. I'm so glad you could be here. Having you with me and listening to my podcast really means a lot to me. So I want you to know that in this new year, where I plan on continuing to podcast every couple of weeks, I'm so very grateful for you, and I'm glad that you're joining me today. Do you make New Year's resolutions? Is that something that you do? I don't. My husband actually asked me the other day if I was making any New Year's resolutions, and I find resolutions to be a bit punitive. Often they're like, oh, I need to exercise more, I need to lose weight, I need to eat better, I need to, I don't know, do things more, do this less. And I don't find that very, I don't find that when I've sort of approached things in that way, I've been very successful. So my plan is to make some goals for myself this year. I plan on trying to read more. I try to, I'm going to try to exercise regularly. I've just started this new yoga routine. I've been trying yoga out this past year. I've been doing more yoga, partly because as we get older, I find that I can't do hard cardio every day. It's just hard on my body. So I've started doing yoga sort of on the off days to try and stretch more and become more limber and maybe become stronger. So in January, I've decided to start this 30 days of yoga. Will I be successful? Who can say? It's just the very beginning of January, but I'm optimistic that I will try and stick with it. And if I can't do them all, then that's okay too. It's not the end of the world. But I like to do Yoga with Adriene, which is a YouTube channel. If I remember, I'll try and link her. I find her yoga very inclusive. I never feel like I'm failing if I can't do all of the poses. She often offers a lot of different options for beginners or for intermediate or to challenge yourself depending on the day that you're having. And I've really enjoyed it. So I'm going to try to do 30 days of yoga this January. Fingers crossed. If I don't do it, it's not the end of the world. For Christmas this year, my daughters planned together to get me a yoga mat, and they were very sneaky. They ordered it online using their debit cards. Their dad had some words with them because they were ordering things online that we didn't know about, but it's one of those things when your kids or people that you know and love get together to buy you something because they really want to give you a nice gift that you'll appreciate, even though they're doing things they shouldn't be doing, like ordering online without their parents' permission. Anyway, so I have a new yoga mat and I'm going to try and use it. I know where we live in Edmonton, Alberta, it's been very mild, just sort of just below freezing. So for us in December, that's pretty nice weather. And since I saw you last, we've been skiing a few times at a local ski hill just around, it's about 20 minutes away. And it's nice for us to go out for an afternoon and ski for a couple of hours. My daughters go off in one direction, my husband and I go off in another direction, and we enjoy being outside and getting some activity and some fresh air. And then we all come home quite tired, but happy. And the other thing we've done just this last week actually was to go skating. It's been quite a while since my daughters went skating. It's just not something that we've sort of kept up with, I guess. And they wanted to try hockey skates, so we went skating, my husband and I on our old skates, and my daughters on their new hockey skates. And when you learn on figure skates and try and switch to hockey skates, there's a bit of a learning curve. So they were like little kids on on their new skates, but they came around, and by the end of the afternoon, they were skating quite well. We went to a local park called Rundle Park, which has a beautiful path system of ice. What they've done is created paths through the trees of ice. And there's a number of them going in different directions. The paths lead to small ice rinks where some kids were playing hockey, and you could just skate along around through the trees, like almost like on a track, but meandering through the trees with different paths going in different directions. It was really beautiful. So if you ever have the chance to go skating, I recommend it. It's really fun to do. But also if you live in the Edmonton area and you have a chance to go to Rundle Park, I really recommend it. It's beautiful. They have lots of sledding hills also, so if that's something you're interested in, I recommend it. So my family and I have been enjoying each other's company because we haven't been able to visit with other people. But we also have been getting outside and enjoying the fresh air in the wintertime. So that's been really nice. How about you? What have you been up to? Is it cold where you are? Is it warm? Do you have traditions that you like to do at New Year's and Christmas? Traditionally for us, we have been known to go skiing quite a bit around Christmas and New Year's, and so that's been nice to kind of keep that up. It may not be in the same way. We often head to the Rocky Mountains, particularly Jasper, to go skiing at this time of year, but with COVID, we decided to stay closer to home, but we still managed to get out skiing, and that was fun. How about your crafting? Have you been crafting a lot? I know I have, mostly because I haven't been at work, and I've just had more time to sort of sit down and get a little bit of knitting done here and there, and so I have a few things to share with you. I know I was knitting a lot of socks up before Christmas time, and I showed you the ones that I gave away. Those were for my daughters, and my last pair of Spark socks were for me, and here they are. I'm quite relieved to be finished them. It 3 pairs of the same sock pattern in a row was a bit much even for me, so I'm glad to have completed my last pair. This is the Sparks sock pattern by Andrea Mowry. I knitted this pair in the main color is Sheepy's Metropolis in the Miami colorway, and the contrast color is Dyed in the Wool by Spin Cycle, and this is the Mississippi Marsala colorway. These two socks are quite different in terms of their coloring. This one with its pinky tones and this one being more orange. But I think they'll be lovely house socks, especially coming home from something like skiing or skating, to put on to keep my feet warm. So I'm looking forward to putting those on. I know we're planning to do a bit more skating tomorrow. So looking forward to wearing these and having cozy feet. And that was my last Sparks sock pattern, at least for the foreseeable future. I need a break from that one. I was also knitting some Advent socks. The first pair I was working on was the Kirby Werby socks in the Super Shitty 2020 colorway. This is a colorway based on the TV show Schitt's Creek, which my husband and I watched this past year. We binge watched the whole thing. And so here are the crazy socks that I came up with. I've already been wearing them. I think they're great. I love them. I love the pops of neon. I love the various colors in them. They go with absolutely everything. And I have another 50 grams of this sock yarn left, so I could make another pair of socks just like these at some point. It's the Kirby Werby Super Shitty 2020 colorway. I used Sheepy's Metropolis in the Warsaw colorway for heels, toes, and cuffs. And I'm really, really happy with these. I've worn them. When I was knitting them, the yarn seemed kind of thin, but like a finer wool than some other yarns that I had been using, and I was worried that they would feel really thin on my feet, but they don't at all. They're just a lovely pair of socks. So that's my second pair of socks. And lastly, I have one more pair of Advent socks. I feel like it was quite ambitious of me to be knitting 2 pairs of Advent socks, although they went along quite nicely. Will I do that again? I don't know. I was definitely on board with the Cozy Knitter 24 stripes Advent sock skein, as I had used it last year and I really enjoyed it. The Kirby Werby one was a bit of a last minute sort of impulse buy, and I enjoyed knitting both of them, but I don't know if I will continue to have that many Advent socks on the needle. Having said that, here's my pair of Cozy Knitter socks. These ones I have also worn and washed, really enjoyed them. The yarn for these is slightly heavier than the super shitty 2020 socks that I just showed you. But having said that, they're really lovely, cozy socks, nice to wear, and I'll be wearing these all year, I think. I used the, say it with me, Sheepy's Metropolis in the Naples colorway for the heels, toes, and cuffs on these socks, and it turns out it was just a really great red. It complements all the other reds and greens and other Christmassy kind of hues in these socks. So that was a really good choice, and I still have lots of that left to be used for future socks, possibly more Christmas socks, we shall see. But that is my last Advent pair of socks. Now I feel like I've been knitting a lot of socks lately. Perhaps if you've watched other episodes, you would agree with me, and you might be sick of seeing all my socks. I needed a change of pace from sock knitting. So when I finished my first Advent pair of socks, and I had only one more pair of Advent socks on the needles, I decided to cast on a sweater. Now this sweater was something that I was talking to you about last time, if you have watched previous episodes. This is a sweater pattern called the Snowy Forest. It is in the most recent edition of Lane magazine. Lane magazine is really one of my favorites. I get every issue. I think they're just beautiful to look at. The photography is amazing. I enjoy that they have so many really interesting articles about different yarn producers, yarn dyers, pattern designers. They have recipes in them, and so I find them really interesting to look at, to read through. And the patterns in this most recent issue have been very much in my style, or appealing to me. And so last time I talked to you about some sweaters that I wanted to cast on from that issue, and I cast on the Snowy Forest. I think I had showed you that I had purchased some yarn for this project at a local yarn shop. The yarn that I purchased, I have a balled up skein for it here, is the Haynes Creek Heathers by Gathering Yarns. That's what the label looks like. Now this pattern calls for either a sport yarn held double with a mohair silk, or a worsted weight yarn. The worsted weight yarn that they used was one that really, I think, plumps up when you block it. So the yarn that I've used, the Haynes Creek, it's a lovely yarn, but it doesn't have that same bloom when you block it. So I did some swatching, and I'm really glad that I did. Let me just show you my swatching process, just to sort of give you an idea of how you might do that yourselves. So the pattern itself calls for the worsted weight yarn to be knit on a 7mm needle to get a gauge of 15 stitches per 4 inches. I wasn't sure that I would like the fabric that I would be knitting with at that size. So what I did was I did some swatches. This is the first set of swatches I did. This bottom one I swatched on 6mm needles. How do I know that? When I make my swatches, I cast on I knit a row, and then the next time I'm on a right side, I do purls for every millimeter for the size of the needle that I'm using. So for example, on this bottom one, I used 6mm needles, and so I did 6 purl bumps. And then I wasn't loving the fabric that I got. So I did so I sort of did a knit and a purl round to have a divider, and then I did change needles to 6.5mm. To denote that, I did 6 purl bumps, and then I left a little space of 2 knits. Can we see that? 2 knits and then another purl. So that tells me I used a 6.5 millimeter needle on the top. I still wasn't loving the fabric that I got, and maybe we can see here that it's just a little bit too transparent a fabric. It's a little bit too see-through, and I wanted something slightly more substantial. So I got my needles out again, and I did another couple of swatches. This one obviously is smaller. This bottom one I did on 5mm needles, and then I did another purl line so I could denote a difference. And then I went up to a 5.5mm on the top. I washed my swatches, I blocked them all, and then I went back and looked at the fabric that I had created. Overall, I liked the fabric of the 5mm one the best. It still has a nice drape to it, but it's not see-through, and I didn't want something that would look flimsy or transparent. I wanted like a substantial fabric. So the fabric I liked the best was the 5mm one. The gauge that I got was 4.5 stitches per inch, or 18 stitches per 4 inches. Now, if you recall, this sweater's original gauge was for 15 stitches for 4 inches. Obviously, that's not going to work. I can't knit the sweater using this yarn and those directions with the needles that I want because my gauge is so very different. So what I did was I had a look at the pattern. To determine the size of sweater I needed to knit from the pattern, I first needed to figure out how many stitches I needed in my final bust measurement. So the bust measurement I was looking for was 44 inches. That gives me some positive ease, or 44 inches is bigger than my actual bust measurement. I wanted this to be a roomier sweater, so I'm looking for a bit of extra room, and 44 inches is the size I was looking for. As I said, the gauge of the fabric that I liked the best was 4.5 stitches per inch. So I took 44 inches and I multiplied that by 4.5 stitches per inch. It gave me a total of, I don't know how many stitches. If I think about it, I'll put it right here. So now I know what number I want to have when I've separated the arms from the body in this top-down sweater. I know how many stitches I want at the bust because I have figured that out with my gauge and my finished size that I'm looking for. Then what I did was I looked through the pattern to find the size that matched that the best. So for me, that was size 8 in this pattern. So I used all of the measurements or the stitch counts for the size 8 pattern because that is what would give me a size 44-inch sweater with my gauge on my yarn and my needles. If you're new to knitting, this sounds a little bit complicated, but really it's just you're using math to your advantage. I don't want to rework the whole sweater to figure out what size I need to make. I can just use the gauge that I have, use the numbers from the pattern that gives me the right stitch count for my gauge, and I should have a sweater that I'm happy with in the end. Now I don't have a finished sweater to show you just yet, but I think I'm making really good progress. So currently I'm knitting the size 8 sweater for stitch numbers with a goal of getting a size 5 sweater when I'm done. So I cast on the neck and I knit a whole lot of ribbing. This looks like a lot of ribbing, but it's really not that much because in the end, this ribbing is going to get folded in and sewn down. So it'll look more like that. And then I completed all of these really beautiful cables. And I just finished those cables the other day, and now I'm just working on a few more increases, and soon I'll be separating the arms from the body. I think at that time I'll be able to tell better whether or not my size is working for me. I think the fact that I chose a size of sweater that gives me 4 inches of positive ease should work to my advantage, because it gives me a bit more room to play with my finished sweater size. I will let you know how this is going, but I've really been enjoying knitting it. The sweater directions are reasonably clear. They're not, I would warn you that they're not written sort of in a way that you may be used to. Some of the language is slightly different, just in terms of how they describe how to do things. Having said that, though, it's not impossible to figure out. It's just written slightly differently. Still an easy to follow pattern, I think. It's just you may have to think of things slightly differently. But here I am. I'm almost done the yoke. This is a very deep yoked sweater. So where the arms are going to separate is going to be sort of lower on me, as you can see. So that means that the sleeves are actually quite a bit shorter than they would be in a regular sweater like this one. That's fine with me. I actually have kind of short arms. It's difficult to tell on video, isn't it? But my arms are somewhat shorter, so I often have to shorten sleeves when I'm knitting myself sweaters. So I think I'm going to be trying this on when I'm knitting the sweater. There is a fair-sized cuff at the bottom, which I quite like. I think it's about 3 inches. So I'll be trying this sweater on to make sure that the sleeve is sort of hitting me at the right point. But I think it's going along really well. It's been nice to knit on something different. I haven't knit a cable project in a while, and so it was really nice to sort of dive back into cables. And these cables are quite interesting because they hide the increases. So as you're knitting them, the cable rounds, you're actually creating some increases, and that was really interesting to do. So this is the Snowy Forest sweater. It is from Laine, the most recent edition of Laine magazine, and I think it's going along really well. I will keep you updated. Now, one cream sweater obviously wasn't enough for me, because I decided on Boxing Day to start another new sweater. This one is also cream. This is the Kaleidoscope sweater, and it is knit from Knit Collage yarn in the Spun Cloud colorway, or Spun Cloud yarn in the French Vanilla colorway. This is very different from my previous sweater. It is very bulky, and I've made a ton of progress on it, partly because the gauge of this sweater is 7.5 stitches for 4 inches. So I mean, this is going to just fly off the needles. The needles I'm using are the same ones I used for that scarf project that I finished, the Plaidtastic scarf. They are 12.75 millimeter needles. So these are like bad boys. And the progress is just, it goes so quickly. I finished, I think I finished the yoke in 1 day. I finished each sleeve was about a day, and now I'm just working down the body. It's just simple stocking stitch, that's all it is. The sleeves were a little bit fussy for me because I was using these needles, but I was using the Magic Loop, and I'm not a big fan of Magic Loop. Partly I just find it fussy. It's not my preferred method of small circumference knitting, but also these needles, with the size that they are, it was sort of, and the yarn, it was just a little bit awkward. But I mean, if you have a look at the sleeve, you can see the stitches are so big that it really didn't take that long to finish. So I have 2 sleeves, 1, 2, and a good portion of the body. My good friend, and it's going around really quickly. I think I'll have this sweater done in a day or 2 if I really worked on it. I've been enjoying knitting with some bulkier yarn. I don't knit often with bulky yarn, And it's a bit of a different experience, but it is certainly enjoyable. The yarn itself is really soft. Let's see if you can see that there is a bit of a metallic thread that wraps the yarn, and it is definitely thick and thin, so it creates quite a textured fabric that I think is really nice. I'm hoping that this feels a lot like a really cozy sweatshirt when I wear it. It will be pretty warm, but I think January and February, around here anyway, are usually quite cool months, so I'm looking forward to having something cozy to be wearing. This sweater doesn't have a lot of finishing to it. It's already knit, like there's no seams to be worked up. There is, however, a crochet edging that is optional, and I may or may not do it on all of the edges. I think I will do a simple crochet edge on this neckline, because the neckline of a sweater is where all of the weight of the sweater is held. And because this is a bulkier yarn, it's a fairly heavy sweater, I want to have a very secure neckline so it doesn't stretch out. So I will be probably crocheting around the neckline. I'm going to wait and see if I want to crochet around the sleeves. I'm not sure that I need more stability here. I'll have to see as I wear it. And then I'll also have to see how the bottom hem of the sweater behaves once I've cast it off. If it flares out a lot, or if it kind of feels like it's going to flare out a lot, I may just do a crochet edge. The crochet edge is simply going to stabilize it and prevent stretching. And so it could be that this sweater may need that, but I don't think I'll know until I'm finished it, which, as you can see, I don't think will take very long at all. So that's my Kaleidoscope sweater. It's knit in Knit Collage yarn in Spun Cloud in the French Vanilla colorway. And I'm going to have two beautiful creamy wintry sweaters. Oh, I hope we get a big batch of snow one day so I can go outside and do some beautiful snowy cream sweater pictures. That's the one thing about living here, is there's usually some good snowy weather for finished objects. My Kaleidoscope sweater coming along really, really nicely. Now, speaking of sweaters, I don't think I told you the name of the sweater that I'm wearing today. This is a sweater I finished a few years ago. It is called the Anniversaire sweater. It is a sweater from Pom Pom Quarterly. It was in their anniversary issue a number of years ago. It's a sweater designed by Vera Valimaki. As you can see, the sleeves heavily cabled, the body heavily cabled, and the back of this sweater has some asymmetric cables going on too. I knit this sweater in Plucky Knitter Sweater DK. It is a really bright fuchsia color. It's quite vibrant, but it's quite a cozy sweater that I don't wear nearly enough. So when I was looking in my closet for something to wear today, I picked it out because it was a bright color, and sometimes in the new year when the days are short, a bright colored sweater is just what you need. I have a picture of myself with the designer of the sweater, Vera Valimaki. She was at Knit City a number of years ago, and I was taking a class from her, so we took a picture together to sort of commemorate that, and I'll share that with you here. So this is the Anniversaire sweater. I highly recommend it if you're adventurous in cabling. They're not difficult cables, but there can be more than one cable to keep track of at a time. So if that is interesting to you, I definitely recommend this sweater design. So that's all the knitting I have for you today, but I do have something new and exciting that I'd like to share with you. For Christmas this year, I got from a friend of mine a kit for embroidery. Now, I haven't done a lot of embroidery in my life. If anything, I've done some cross stitch, especially when I was younger. But I really was excited by this kit. It's called Yarn for Days. It's by a company called Knitted Bliss. And the kit that I got included all the floss I needed to create this project, some needles, pre-printed fabric with the design on it, and then a pattern instructions, a pattern sheet and instructions, and 2 needles. So I'll show you where I'm at. So this is, it's called Yarn for Days. It's a whole bunch of little yarn balls in different colors. And I've almost finished 3 of the colors. So each little circle represents a yarn ball, and the instructions tell me what colors I should be using. I'm just using satin stitch, and my satin stitch is not perfect. I sort of was curious as to whether or not I should be outlining the balls or not. But what I have been doing at, up to this point is just using the satin stitch and not outlining the balls. And my rationale was that's what a yarn ball would look like. You know, you wrap the yarn around, it's not going to be perfect around the outside. And I think if I tried to outline it, it might look kind of funny. So I haven't done that yet. You know what? I don't think I will. So I've really been enjoying this. I pick it up and work on it every day or two. And I try and finish off a few balls at a time. But this is the Yarn for Days by Knitted Bliss. I have, let me show you the floss. This kit includes, I think, 11 different colors of yarn. Yes, 11 colors of yarn. And embroidery is something that completely reminds me of my mom and her mom. Both my mother and my grandmother, my Baba, did a lot of cross stitch or embroidery when I was a kid. And so this kit completely, as soon as I saw it, I just brought them to my mind. And so I did what I remember them doing, and I cut out a piece of cardboard because I'm really fancy. Cut out a piece of cardboard and I cut little slits in the sides, and that's where I put all of my yarn or my floss. And so you can see I wrote on the piece of cardboard what the colors were because I'm super fancy, and partly because this is exactly what I remember them doing when I was a kid. They didn't have like fancy floss holders. They didn't have plastic containers for all their yarn. They just had the little skeins of embroidery floss and a piece of cardboard where they wrote all the numbers down. So that's what I did. Seemed to make sense. And as I was getting my floss ready, my daughters were helping me, I found that the kit, in fact, was missing one of the yarns, the light purple, in fact. I wasn't too stressed about it. The way that the yarn works, or the floss works for this embroidery project, is you're always using one strand of one yarn or one color with one strand of another color to create this sort of, not marled, but I would say dimensional color. So each of these is one strand of one color and one strand of another color held together instead of 2 strands of the same floss. So I thought, well, if I have to, I'll just, fudge it for those colors. But in the meantime, I thought I'll just email the lady who, from Knitted Bliss. She very kindly has her email included on the instruction sheet. I emailed her. She got back to me very quickly, apologized profusely. It's a simple mistake. I wasn't too worried about it. And she has mailed me the yarn or the floss that I'm missing, and it should be here in a day or two. So I have to say, the service from Knitted Bliss, exactly what I would have hoped for. She was delightful. She's sending me the floss that I need, and that's really all I wanted. So I would recommend these kits, especially as a beginner embroiderist. I'm not sure what we call ourselves, but I'm really enjoying it. More than I thought I would. And I think partly because of the connection that I feel with my mom and my grandma in doing and working on this project. And it really is just an enjoyable thing to do. And in the end, I'll have a really nice little picture that I will probably hang in my craft room. or maybe somewhere else. And I've already started looking at other kits. This might be a slippery slope. I haven't ordered anything yet. I just sort of want to finish this one and see how I feel. I'm going to have some floss left over for sure. I'm not going to be needing everything that I was sent, and so I'm just going to keep it and see if there's another kit or a pattern that strikes my fancy. Certainly at the local yarn store that I have been shopping at lately, they have some cross-stitch kits by Junebug and Darlin. I hope I said that right. And they are adorable. So I've been very good. I've been holding off on ordering anything new until I finish this one and get a sense of how I feel about it, or if I want to start another one. But honestly, I've really, really enjoyed this, and more than I thought I would. So I'd like to thank you, dear friend, who gave me this wonderful kit for Christmas, and I'm looking forward to just spending some time with it over the next few weeks. So yeah, who knew? Embroidery. And I may have to change the title of this this blog to Jolene Knits a Lot and Sometimes Embroiders. Now that same lovely friend who got me that kit obviously knows me very well, because she also got me a sock kit, which is so lovely. This is from Lily & Pine. They are dyers from, I believe, made in Calgary. I didn't realize that. Okay, Lily & Pine, made in Calgary. Very exciting. This is the Daylily sock in the peppermint bark kit. Now, if that doesn't say peppermint bark, I don't know what does. So this will make a lovely pair of holiday socks, but I think you could almost, like, now that I look at it, I might knit some Valentine's Day socks with this kit. Or Canada Day. Honestly, I think it's beautiful. The kit is lovely. I love the cream yarn with the speckles of red and this really nice tonal red for heels, cuffs, and toes. So this was another kind gift that I got for Christmas, and I look forward to fondling it a lot. And then when the mood strikes for me to start some socks again, I think I'll be reaching for this kit. Again, it's just lovely. The colors are beautiful, the yarn is soft, and a thoughtful gift for Christmas. So thank you very much, dear friend. And that, my friends, is all that I have to share with you. That is to say, I'm so glad that you have been here spending time with me. I am so grateful for your comments when you leave them. I'm happy to start getting to know some of you in your comments, and I'm really grateful for the time that you spend with me here. It means a lot to me every day. Every time I get a new subscriber, I tell my kids, and they're so excited. So I want to say thank you very much for your support and for sticking with me and for joining me for knitting or crafting or cocktails or baking. Did anyone make the butter tart squares, by the way? Anyone? Bueller? Ours are gone. Like, they have been wiped out. My husband ate most of them. They were delightful. And fun fact, his birthday is actually soon. It's on the 10th of January. So he has requested a batch of butter tart squares for his birthday. So not just a holiday treat. I think they can be enjoyed at any time of the year. And I think we'll be making another batch soon for my husband's birthday. So thank you so much again for joining me. I hope that this new year brings you a sense of hope and allows you an opportunity to think of some goals for yourself, like trying embroidery, knitting yourself a sweater, taking some time to read. The good friend who I talked to you a little bit about, who had given me these lovely gifts, we have started a poetry club. which that is to say, it's really just an excuse for us to get together on FaceTime or Zoom or whatever every week or two to mostly drink wine, but also to talk about poetry and just to touch base with each other. So if that's something you're interested in, maybe we can start a poetry club too. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. But I hope this new year brings us a little closer to the light and a little bit further from the dark. I hope that in the next couple of weeks you find time to do something that you really enjoy. I know I plan on knitting a lot. Thanks so much for joining me. Happy New Year. All the best.